design can be this beautiful and impactful thing. It can be art, but there's a purpose that underlines it. I think the expression that a lot of people are more familiar with is like form meeting functionality. So the thing itself, the experience itself, the service itself must meet a baseline function. And for a long time, that was basically like, is this meeting a basic user need? And now, looking kind of broadly at a lot of the things that we see in the tech industry, specifically in content specifically, it's meeting that basic need, but now we're sort of leveling up on that to say, okay, but delight is also a function of design. So my name is Elizabeth. I actually go by Bits, but I answer to either. I'm currently a UX designer, user experience designer at TED, also known as TED Talks, TED Conferences, and I work across TED's digital products, both consumer-facing but also internal products. A lot of what TED runs on is actually self-built. Our technology team does it all, really. Jack of all trades. Yeah, so I actually have a very kind of wandering path to design. I actually come from more of a like health background, so I studied public health in school, and it wasn't until senior year that I was like introduced to this, what we know as design thinking, so like IDEO's kind of framework for designing. And I was kind of brought into that through the lens of designing for public health and designing for health experiences, and more from a service design perspective. And then I kind of walked away from that with my first couple of jobs, and I ended up in a kind of account strategy role for Kennedy Space Center, actually, which was really neat. But I always kind of felt this itch to go back to being less of a delegator and more of like a creator. And so it's been a real schlep the past probably 2 years as I kind of laid the groundwork for what I'm doing now. So it was a lot of freelance work, a lot of like asking people what I can help them do, just really a lot of small kind of freelancing niche roles. And TED kind of was totally, I mean, everyone knows, I shouldn't say that, but a lot of people know what TED is, and it was certainly on my radar when I decided I wanted to go in-house somewhere, and applied from the website, and here I am, so. Yeah, so that's interesting. It's having the perspective now of working for myself and in a freelance capacity, and now working for a team that creates a product that millions of people see every day. It definitely varies. So I would say I'm surprised by sometimes how quickly things happen, and then alternatively how slow things are. So if it's something like improving an existing experience or a product, so let's say like a feature on our talk page, so the page that people come to view TED content, that could be a really short process, and the kind of clipped research that happens there is just a lot of questions to my team who maybe have historical context around why we're doing the things, why we're testing it this way, what have we tested before in the past. So those things are really quick, and that's like changing button language or changing the way that we kind of promote the share experience or allow users to share a talk. For the kind of bigger media projects, what I look for, what I'm really trying to get at is finding these like points of tension. So when we're starting like a project or conceptually have an idea that we want to scratch this itch, it's really going out and conducting research. It always starts with research. To the degree to which you can do that, it varies, and obviously like when you're moving as quickly as we do, it doesn't always happen. But in a lot of my kind of like solo endeavors, it starts with talking to people, and really I want to find the point of tension and the friction between what they say they want and what it is they're actually doing. So a lot of times like users will, or people will create hacks to get the intended result that they want anyways. And so it's finding a way to listen to that and hear like the way that they're trying to solve this problem already and how we kind of make that much easier for them. I am surprised by how just quick and dirty a lot of it is. When you do stuff in your own time, you have the tendency, like in a freelancing capacity, you have the tendency to just really marinate on an idea and be like, no, gotta get it perfect, gotta get it perfect. It really is true what they say, like just ship it and then learn from that. That still is something that I'm like wrapping my hands around. But I mean, there's a time and a place for that, but I would definitely say that people are more comfortable with risks than I would have maybe assumed coming from the perspective of a job that seems so calculating and so thoughtful. Sometimes the like most thoughtful thing you can do is just release it to the wild and just see what happens. So design to me is creating with intention for an intention. As a designer, there should always be a purpose to what it is that you're creating. Design can be this beautiful and impactful thing. It can be art, but there's a purpose that underlines it. I think the expression that a lot of people are more familiar with is like form meeting functionality. So the thing itself, the experience itself, the service itself must meet a baseline function. And for a long time that was basically like, is this meeting a basic user need? And now looking kind of broadly at a lot of the things that we see in the tech industry, specifically in content specifically, it's meeting that basic need, but now we're sort of leveling up on that to say, okay, but delight is also a function of design. And how can we layer in and design for user delight? And so there's now these like gradients of what that intention is, and I think that kind of backs into like the intention of the designer themselves. And there's design has entered this new phase where there's maybe a nuance and a kind of, I don't know, like delicateness is the right word, but there's just so much to explore and through the lens of design. It's really exciting. I mean, design should always be simple, and that's what makes it really challenging, but I love listening to movie film scores. I when I'm like really trying to focus and get the creative juices happening, I can't have words. So I like film scores because there's string and they're orchestral and they're passionate and there's like energy there, but it's not like a distracting kind where my brain is like jumping to kind of interpret the words. So I always default to film scores. I would say when I'm doing really kind of like rote design work, so I have to create symbols or duplicate the screen with in these different states, then I'll listen to like, I've actually been in like a big 80s kick, like Jefferson Starship. I go like real pop because that's like keeps the spirits high. It can get pretty dark, you know, when you're like on screen 40 and there's like one element of change between this one and the last one. So yeah. So I don't know, just really rallying cry around designing for disability by designing with disabled people, with disabled designers. This idea of products in general are very adaptive for disabled users, when in reality it really shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't be like the last step in a process for you to, oh, well, we have to make our design accessible, so we should tack this one little thing on at the end. Liz Jackson's actually a designer who is a pretty like prolific voice in this kind of leading this charge around integrating disabled designers into the process. I mean, you have so many instances of brands that design for disabled people without actually asking disabled people for input into the process, which blows my mind. But working, I mean, the TED.com's website, for instance, has like millions of people trafficking it, and they're global users and they speak tons of different languages, and so I understand from the kind of in practice perspective of how challenging that is to work into a process where historically we really have thought of it as like a kind of last step or make sure, when really it should just be baked in from the beginning. And when you see that happening, you get really great products like OXO, kitchenware, so many tools that are designed for people that can't use the things that we've designed because we've chosen to not make them accessible for all. It just really are the ones that like bubble up to the top as being the kind of most steadfast, powerful products that we have.